The readings for Tuesday, February 7th. The epistle reading is from St. Peter's Second Universal Letter, chapter 2, verses 9 through 22. Then the Lord knows how to deliver the godly out of temptations, to reserve the unjust under punishment for the day of judgment, and especially those who walk according to the flesh, in the lust of uncleanliness, and despise authority. They are presumptuous, self-willed. They are not afraid to speak evil of dignitaries, whereas angels, who are greater in power and might, do not bring a reviling accusation against them before the Lord. But these, like natural brute beasts, made to be caught and destroyed, speak evil of the things they do not understand, and will utterly perish in their own corruption, and will receive the wages of unrighteousness, as those who count it pleasure to carouse in the daytime. They are spots and blemishes, carousing in their own deceptions while they feast with you, having eyes full of adultery, and that cannot cease from sin, enticing unstable souls. They have a heart trained in covetous practices, and are accursed children. They have forsaken the right way and gone astray, following the way of Balaam, the son of Beor, who loved the wages of unrighteousness. But he was rebuked for his iniquity. A dumb donkey, speaking with a man's voice, restrained the madness of the prophet. These are wells without water, clouds carried by a tempest, for whom is reserved the blackness of darkness forever. For when they speak great swelling words of emptiness, they allure through the lusts of the flesh, through lewdness, the ones who have actually escaped from those who live in error. While they promise them liberty, they themselves are slaves of corruption. For by whom a person is overcome, by him also he is brought into bondage. For if, after they have escaped the pollutions of the world through the knowledge of the Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, they are again entangled in them and overcome, the latter end is worse for them than the beginning. For it would have been better for them not to have known the way of righteousness than having known it, to turn from the holy commandment delivered to them. But it has happened to them according to the true proverb, a dog returns to his own vomit, and a sow having washed to her wallowing in the mire. All right, St. Peter uses a lot more bold language, I guess, than St. Paul, which says a lot. Let's hit some of these footnotes from the Orthodox Study Bible. So for verses 12 through 17, false teachers are condemned for both their words and their actions. Those who are natural cannot understand spiritual things, as noted in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 14, and will be destroyed, as false prophets have been in the past. The story of Balaam in verse 15, it just says, for the story of Balaam, see Numbers chapter 22, verse 1 through chapter 25, verse 9, and chapter 31, verse 8 and 16, as well as Deuteronomy chapter 23, verses 4 and 5, Josiah chapter 13, verse 22, and Jude chapter 11. And for verse 19, a common misunderstanding of liberty or freedom is to see it as standing apart from all moral restraints, to say there is no such thing as sin. But this results in slavery of the worst kind, bondage to egotistic and sensual passions. True Christian freedom brings with freedom from sin, freedom from immoral activity. A Christian is called to live in purity in an impure world. The Gospel reading is from the book of Mark, chapter 13, verses 14 through 23. So, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing where it ought not, let the reader understand, then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let him who is on the housetop not go down into the house, nor enter to take anything out of his house. And let him who is in the field not get back to get his clothes. But woe to those who are pregnant and to those who are nursing babies in those days. And pray that your flight may not be in winter, for in those days there will be tribulation, such as not been since the beginning of the creation, which God created until this time, nor ever shall be. And unless the Lord had shortened those days, no flesh would be saved. But for the elect's sake, whom he chose, he shortened the days. Then if anyone says to you, Look, here's the Christ, or Look, he is there, do not believe it. For false Christs and false prophets will rise and show signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. But take heed. See, I have told you all these things beforehand. All right, that's some footnotes from the Orthodox Study Bible. So, I guess we really don't. 14 through 20. So we've got one footnote for verses 5 through 23. So quite a bit before where we started, but ending at the same spot. Feel free to read those first verses in your own apps or Bibles to get the context here. But for verses 5 through 23, it says to see the footnotes at Matthew chapter 24, verses 3 through 31. The account of the end times is given here in a reverse parallel, or chiastic form. I did not know that word before right now. In which the topics mentioned in the first half of the passage are repeated and amplified in reversed order in the second half. Thus, the passage both begins and ends with a warning to take heed about false Christs in verses 5 and 23. The second warning about wars in verse 7, while the second to last warning is about tribulation in verse 19. The third warning concerns being delivered up to councils in verse 9, while the third to last warning is also about being delivered up, this time by family members, as noted in verse 12. At the center of this discourse is the prophecy that the gospel must first be preached to all the nations, as noted in verse 10, which is at the heart of apostolic ministry and mission of the church, as noted in Matthew chapter 28, verses 19 and 20. Well, that's going to do it, everybody. Hope you have a marvelous Tuesday. It's looking like a high of 64 where I am at today, so I cannot complain about that for early February. But no matter where you're at, just enjoy the day. Live it out to God's glory, and please, if you could, include me, a sinner, in your prayers. Thank you.